Alright, welcome to the channel everyone. In today's video, Altcoin Annihilation season, we're going to be talking about a plethora of different indicators and different charts which categorically state that altcoins are exceptionally bearish against Bitcoin. A quick run through before we do jump into today's video. For the past 3 weeks worth of data traded over on the Bitcoin price, Bitcoin has been capitulating below major levels of support, and we've been moving into new lows of this market cycle. Coming over to the Bitcoin dominance within the past week, the Bitcoin dominance is having an explosion, an absolutely unruly explosion. We are massively breaking out of this pattern that we've been consolidating in since May the 3rd. Because of these reasons and other charts, other technicals that I'm going to be running through in today's video, I believe we're about to experience a altcoin annihilation season. So what are we going to be talking about today? In today's video, we're going to be talking about the Bitcoin price. We're going to be moving on to the altcoin BTC pairs, but more importantly, this is where we're going to move on to in the later part of today's video. We're going to be talking about the Bitcoin dominance. We're going to be talking about some macro altcoin charts like the Altcoin Marketcap. And then we're going to be talking about how previous trends within the crypto markets have affected how altcoins perform in previous bear markets and how altcoins perform at the start of bull markets. But a very important caveat of that, we're going to be checking out how they perform against predominantly the Bitcoin pair. Let's jump into today's video. So, like I said, the Bitcoin price has been capitulating for the past, well, it's been capitulating for the past year or so, but really the past 3 weeks is what I'm interested in. If we come over to the monthly time frame, you can see we've massively capitulated below our previous lows. While this is not a beautiful pattern by any means, this is a head and shoulders pattern which we are currently kind of literally sitting on the verge of the capitulation below these support levels. So when has this previously happened? When have we previously been building in a massive range with a support floor that we've capitulated below? Well, the last time we've done this was in the previous bear market coming into November and December. Granted, when you notice you're in a bear market, you're pretty much already at the end of the bear market by the time you realize and acknowledge you're in a bear market. For example, back in 2018, if we acknowledged that we were in a bear market in November the 12th of 2018, the bottom would have been in by, when was it? I believe it was on this wick down here on December 10th. Not even a month away from when we had the mass capitulation, the bottom was in. And I do think something like that is going to be happening this market cycle, where we do come down to 22,000 before we do have any sort of a bounce. But that being said, how do altcoins perform against Bitcoin when Bitcoin is in this capitulation phase, and how does altcoins perform against Bitcoin after Bitcoin has that capitulation phase? Before we answer that, we're going to be looking at the altcoin BTC pairs just to hammer in, because I know there's still a few moon boys out there. I know that there's people, I'm not going to mention any names, but people that have been talking about, the altcoin bottoms are near, they've been saying it for the past couple of months now. They've been saying, now's the time to buy the dip on your favorite altcoins. Now is the time where we're getting cheap prices. Well, I'm telling you, I was here in 2018. If you weren't here in 2018, you do not know what cheap altcoins are. If you're looking at Solana right now, just an example, if you're looking at Solana at $44 after Solana's just come down from $260, and you're thinking that that is a cheap altcoin, well, my friend, wait until we get to the end of this video, because people back in 2018 thought they were buying cheap altcoins, but what they were really buying is the dip before the dip before the dip before the dip. Let's jump into today's video. So This is going to be a quick segment. I really just want to hammer in the fact that there's still people buying dips on these altcoins. Look at Gala. This is not the USD chart. We do not care about the USD chart for this video. We're looking at how altcoins are performing against Bitcoin. So bear in mind, if you're holding an altcoin, if you're buying an altcoin, etc., if you're trading an altcoin, you're taking on a ton of extra risk than if you were just buying Bitcoin. And if that altcoin is not performing as well as Bitcoin, then you're basically flushing money down the toilet because you're taking on extra risk and you're not getting any sort of extra return. Looking at Gala against Bitcoin, making some super quick fire analysis on this, you know, the Fibonacci is invalidated, we're below the 786, we're below the trend line, we're clearly bearish. Apecoin against Bitcoin, you can see it only released quite recently and it has been capitulating since it topped out. In my opinion, Apecoin is going to continue to go down against Bitcoin. Axie Infinity against Bitcoin. This is something that's just capitulated below the 786 Fibonacci, and this is from me drawing it from the start of the trend down here. You know, I could have cherry picked the data and drawn it all the way down here, and we would even be below the 786 at that point. So no matter how you draw, the 786 is invalidated. We are below everything on Axie Infinity against Bitcoin. Look at Engine Coin. Engine Coin's getting slaughtered. Once again, another crypto below the 786 Fibonacci over on its Bitcoin pair. Cadena is getting wrecked against Bitcoin. You know, once again, this has been something that I've been covering on my channel for quite some period of time now, and I've been telling you, be very, very careful. If you've been watching my KDA videos for the past month or month and a half, 2 months now, can't remember how long it's been, you're saving extortionate amounts of money, because there's been moon boys around these periods saying, you know, buy the dip on KDA, buy the dip, buy the dip, buy the dip. We've been telling you it's going to get worse and to sit on the sidelines, and altcoins have been doing nothing but getting wrecked against their Bitcoin pairs week after week after week. Dogecoin is on its last legs, coming down to the 786 Fibonacci, and this is only because I've drawn it to the candle body close. If I draw it from the wick, we're already below the 786 Fibonacci. Crypto.com, how is CRO performing against Bitcoin? Well, there's barely any trend lines on the BTC pair, and I wouldn't really draw, I wouldn't be too interested on fibs on this one. But we are coming down to the 786, and we've broken below the last level of support before we do come down to the 786. So Crypto.com in a downtrend against Bitcoin. JASMY in a huge downtrend against Bitcoin. Tron looking okay in the past month. Zooming out, you can see, you know, since 2018, when it topped out in the start of pretty much the start of the bear market, all we've been doing is having huge dumps, and every now and then we have a huge rally. But every time we have these rallies, just like right now, we're having a huge rally. This is lower than this, meaning that sure, Tron outperformed the US dollar quite nicely in the previous bull market that we were just kind of sitting in 2020, 2021. But measuring it against Bitcoin, Tron, you were just better off holding Bitcoin. There was no time in this cycle where you were better off holding Tron, unless you were getting in at the exact bottom before a swing trade and then getting back into Bitcoin. Let's move on. Green Metaverse token. Once again, another one of these newly hyped up projects. Like Apecoin gets hyped up, has its run, and now it is bleeding out against the Bitcoin pair. Near against Bitcoin, massively capitulating from the lows. We're coming down to the 786 right now. Chainlink, massive downtrend against Bitcoin. AMP, massive downtrend against Bitcoin. Matic, massive downtrend against Bitcoin. The Graph, Solana, it does not matter what you were looking at. Pretty much every single altcoin, and that being like 99.5%. Obviously, I know there's going to be a few which quite recently, for example, BNB, have been doing okay against their Bitcoin pair. However, I don't think it's something that's necessarily going to hold up for the next couple of months or so. So we talked about what happened in the previous cycles when Bitcoin moves below these trend lines. I'm saying, at least in my opinion, I think Bitcoin's moving down to 22,000. I've shown you now what the alt BTC pairs look like. Now let's move on to the Bitcoin dominance. And I've made a separate video about this, so I'm really going to make this another quick segment. But the Bitcoin dominance is breaking out of this pattern. What does this mean? This means out of the total crypto market cap, that Bitcoin's market cap constitutes a larger sum of money, or rather a larger sum percent than other altcoin markets. So for example, at this moment in time, the Bitcoin dominance is at 46%. That means if you add up the entirety of all of the market caps out of every crypto, you add them all up, 46% of that is currently constituting Bitcoin. And just to make things super simple, if you still don't get it, if the Bitcoin dominance, obviously it won't happen, if it hypothetically goes to 100%, then altcoins will have zero market cap whatsoever, meaning they all go to zero. If the Bitcoin dominance goes to zero and altcoins still have liquidity in the market, it means that Bitcoin's market cap went to zero and altcoins are the only thing that takes up that market. Just a very super simple concept there for you to grasp. But the Bitcoin dominance is breaking out of this channel right now, and it looks super bullish. It's been pretty much going up in a straight line for the past couple of weeks now, and you know, I say a straight line, but you know, there's been a few bumps up and down on the way, but it seems like we're just breaking up, bull flag, breaking out of that bull flag into a mini bull flag, and at this moment in time it looks like we're about to set up a mini bull flag pattern where we're probably going to be going up to higher price targets on the Bitcoin dominance. Like I said, what normally happens previous market cycles, the Bitcoin dominance breaks out of these channels, and quite interestingly, I've got this highlighted, the Bitcoin dominance did not break out until the bear market was almost said and done. Remember, we looked at this Bitcoin price chart, and if we zoom back to where the exact bottom was, you can see it was down here on the 10th of December. But the Bitcoin dominance over on the 10th of December, you can see it took a while, but we moved from approximately 60% all the way up to about 74% of the market cap. So, you know, we were already in this bear market. Like I said, you know, it's sometimes hard to recognize or acknowledge that we're in a bear market, but this whole phase was a bear market right here, and people only somewhat accepted, or at least the smart traders only accepted that it was a bear market once we were coming around to this capitulation phase during the 12th of November. What you'll notice is that the bottom was the 10th of December. That was literally less than a month away that the Bitcoin dominance started moving up, and we bottomed. Looking at the Bitcoin dominance, if this keeps playing out from where we broke out before and we had our bear market bottom, because, you know, we don't know if this is going to be the bottom. Hypothetically, if something like this plays out, then what you'll notice is the Bitcoin dominance will probably go up. It will go up for a couple of weeks, and then somewhere in the next month or two, let's say round about here, so hypothetically, let's say November time is when the Bitcoin all-time low of the bear market will incur. What will happen is Bitcoin will have a bounce, some of the altcoins will get greedy, they'll come up a tiny bit while the Bitcoin dominance moves down, and then the Bitcoin dominance will go for its mega move, and the altcoins will be left behind in the dust. And we're going to be talking about this towards the latter half of this video. But once again, just something to note, the Bitcoin bottom may be in, just like it was over here on the 10th of December 2018. Once again, if you look at the price, 10th of December was the bottom of the Bitcoin price. However, the Bitcoin dominance continued to move up, meaning the altcoins still got slaughtered against Bitcoin even after it bottomed. Quickly, let's talk about the altcoin market charts, and then we're going to be talking about how altcoins performed in previous cycles during the Bitcoin bear market and after Bitcoin had its bear market low and then moved into a bullish phase, because it's very eye-opening results if you've never checked it out. Once again, this segment is only going to take up about 2 minutes or so, but if we start off with the total crypto market cap, this is the market cap of, as you probably guessed it, Bitcoin and all of the altcoins. This is capitulating below the 618, which in theory should mean that from where we are at this moment in time, that another 468 odd billion, not million, 468 billion should leave the crypto markets before we find some sort of bottom. At least that is what our Fibonacci structure is saying. Now, moving on to the altcoins, it's somewhat more ugly. Like, let's just take it from here. You can see, let's call this approximately $500 billion drop down to the next 786 fib. The altcoin market alone would be moving down 280 billion. What does this mean? This means if we kind of do some maths here, that if the altcoin market cap is going to move down 280 billion and the total crypto market cap is going to move down $500 billion, this should mean that we have about another 220 billion unaccounted for in the altcoin market, which obviously comes over into Bitcoin. So these charts would be predicting that altcoins, all of the altcoins, would move down 280 billion, while Bitcoin only moves down a modest 220 billion. Once again, kind of sticking with this fact that the Bitcoin dominance is likely to go up because altcoins are much more likely to have a mass bleed out phase than Bitcoin is. Looking at these charts, specifically the total 2, which is the altcoin market cap, if we do come down to the 786, I want you to recognize this. When other YouTubers were kind of shilling these altcoins and hyping up everything for the past couple of weeks and the past month or so, remember, I've been one of the only channels that's been very, very hard hitting on these altcoins. I've been telling you for ages on my videos, on my Discord. I've been talking about this on my Twitter for the past couple of weeks now. You can go and check back. I've been telling you Bitcoin is king, and I've been telling you altcoin holders are going to get slaughtered. I've been saying this for weeks now. I've said it multiple times. I'm not going to find everyone. Once again, I said, you know, altcoin's about to get the dollar's hands here. I've also been saying when the Bitcoin dominance breaks out that the shitcoins of the market are going to be cleansed, and they're probably going to get decimated, and only the strong projects will survive. Let's move on to the next segment of this video. So I want to talk about how altcoins previously performed in Bitcoin bear markets. For this specifically, I want to look at Ethereum and ADA. Why do I want to look at Ethereum and ADA? Not only are Ethereum and ADA probably two of the most well-known altcoins, the Ethereum and ADA BTC charts trend back a very, very long time. And also we know that Ethereum and ADA did exceptionally well in this market cycle. So it's not like we're picking some random shitcoin. It's not like we're picking ICP or XRP. We're not choosing, you know, the shitcoins of crypto. We're choosing cryptos that have massive market capitalization. We're choosing cryptocurrencies which are both early movers in their respective fields, and we're also picking cryptocurrencies which are, you know, fairly trusted and have a good track record. Let's jump right into this. So what I want to point out is, once again, looking at the Bitcoin USD chart, when did Bitcoin bottom? We bottomed on the 10th of December 2018. Let's mark it right there with an arrow. What happened on the 10th of December 2018 when Bitcoin bottomed over on Ethereum? Well, you'll notice if we find the bottom, the 10th of December 2018 was the bottom over here on Ethereum. But what you'll notice is Ethereum basically did nothing but go up and sideways for 455 days. Yes, it went sideways for over a year, and during that year's period it moved up approximately 11 to 12% after it back tested its low. What did the ETH BTC pair do during that period of time? So if we come back and we find how Ethereum performed against Bitcoin in 2018, what you'll notice is, once again, right here, the 10th of December 2018. This is when Bitcoin bottomed, and everyone seems to think right now, I see everyone saying when Bitcoin bottoms, it is the time to buy your favorite altcoins. But what does the data say? Because a lot of people like to talk without looking at the data, and I question, what data are you looking at? Because let's look at how Ethereum performed against Bitcoin when Bitcoin bottomed. Well, 10th of December, what you'll notice is what happened for, this is the weekly time frame, by the way, so what happened, you know, a couple of months later? Ethereum moved down 35% against its Bitcoin valuation. Why did this happen? Because Ethereum didn't do a lot. I mean, yeah, it had an okay move up. We moved up about 4x. If we move over to the Bitcoin price, you can actually see that even though Bitcoin has a much higher market cap Although people say it is a slow mover, we did pretty much the same move. You know, one moved up 370%, one moved up 340%, but what happened after Bitcoin dropped? Bitcoin held itself up relatively okay, and yes, granted, we did come back down and double back test. We came down to 3,800 after initially coming down to 3,800, but looking at ETH BTC, Bitcoin clearly outperformed Ethereum. If we take a price chart, Ethereum did not start, you know, outperforming Bitcoin in the general part of things until we moved over to this section over here. This was 602 days after Bitcoin had its bear market bottom. So what does this tell us? Or in fact, it's a tiny bit over 600 days, it's 588 days. What does this tell us? This tells us that if you bought the exact bottom of Ethereum instead of buying the exact bottom of Bitcoin, then you would have been better off holding Bitcoin, because, you know, Bitcoin outperformed Ethereum in the short term, and then not necessarily in the bull market. I'm definitely not saying that Ethereum outperforms Bitcoin, that Bitcoin doesn't outperform I'm not saying that Ethereum doesn't outperform Bitcoin in bull markets. However, what I will say is, even if you just held Bitcoin from June of 2017, there wasn't really any period of time where if you were just holding Ethereum, you would have outperformed Bitcoin. In fact, if you were holding Bitcoin in any of these periods of time and you switched over to Ethereum, you would have never got your money back. In fact, you can see that we came close to it. We came up to about 8% of a Bitcoin in terms of its Ethereum valuation, but we were originally up at 15%, and then we were originally up at, you know, 12.5%. And then we came down to about 8%. So what you'll notice over time is Ethereum is actually dropping and underperforming against Bitcoin. Let's move on to ADA, because I know a lot of people also like looking at how ADA performed. ADA was probably the most hyped up cryptocurrency that I can think of coming into this cycle. So how did ADA do, and how did ADA BTC do? So looking at ADA, let's go back. We're going to need a new chart actually. I think I've already added one down here somewhere. ADA USDT. Let's move back. So all the way back here, what you'll notice is that ADA basically almost shared the same bottom as Bitcoin. Once again, like Ethereum, we came around on the bottom at about the 10th of December, but then extrapolating this over, how long did it take? I was using the right tool for once. We trended sideways for 455 days. That is a whole year after Bitcoin entered its bear market. And the reason I'm talking about this is because I see a lot of people who are new to the crypto markets, a lot of people who got in the past couple of months or so, and they think because the Moon Boys over on Twitter are telling them that once Bitcoin bottoms, it's the time to load up on altcoins. The data shows the complete opposite. And I went through a ton of different cryptos just to make sure that I wasn't cherry picking or anything. But, you know, once again, you know, even from ADA's high, from its low pumping up, you would have been better off holding Bitcoin, because at this time, I think we measured it, Bitcoin moved up, what was it, 340% from the low. That is a fib. From the low, Bitcoin moved up 340%, and ADA only moved up 280%. So you can clearly see even the top altcoins. And once again, this wasn't the low. ADA came back, you know, a year later, more than a year later. It came back 455 days later to make a new low. So how did ADA perform against Bitcoin once Bitcoin had its bottom? Well, once again, you can see right here, let me mark it perfectly, that tiny green candle right there at the bottom had the wick to the exact low on ADA BTC, right? Yeah, it did for about 3 months, and then it rolled back down and it went back to these lows, meaning that even if you bought the exact bottom, which by the way is something that you're not going to be able to do, it's something that most people aren't going to be able to do, even if you bought the exact bottom for your favorite altcoin, let's say it was Ethereum or ADA, in this example ADA, it moved down 53% against its Bitcoin pair. What does that mean? That simply means if you were holding Bitcoin after Bitcoin bottomed, you outperform the altcoin market. If you held, because we went through this at the start of the video, if you held for the past 6 months Bitcoin instead of any of these altcoins, you outperform the altcoins. I mean, look at this. Once again, Gala, Ape, Axie, Cardano, Engine, Dogecoin, doesn't matter, you name it, it's down against Bitcoin. Crypto.com, JASMY, Tron, Green Metaverse Token, Link, Near, AMP, The Graph, even Solana. Solana was holding up better than most of the altcoins, and it's getting slaughtered against its Bitcoin pair right now. So that basically covers it. Now, we talked about how altcoins performed in previous bear markets, and we just brushed over how altcoins perform at the start of bull markets. And what I mean by the start of bull markets is really the end of the previous bear markets, because like I said, we just went through that huge list of charts. At this moment in time, coming into the bear market, all the altcoins are underperforming against Bitcoin, and people are waiting. They're sitting on the sidelines and they're saying, you know, Cowboy, when should I buy the dip? When should I buy altcoins? When should I stack up on my altcoins? But the previous data shows that you're probably better off just sitting on the sideline for the next year in Bitcoin. And I know that's so boring, and that doesn't mean that altcoins can't have weeks, months or so where they can't outperform their Bitcoin pairs. I mean, we looked at it with Ethereum. Ethereum went up 270% after it bottomed. Bitcoin only went up 340%. So, you know, Ethereum outperformed Bitcoin by about 30%. But looking at things in the macro scale, which is much more important to look at, Ethereum did not outperform Bitcoin after Bitcoin had its bottom. In fact, it did the complete opposite. Bitcoin made its lows, Bitcoin bounced, the altcoins bounced once again very temporarily for 3 weeks, and this is what I keep hammering in. A lot of, you know, I make a macro video one day and I say I'm bearish on altcoins for the next 6 months, and then the price goes up 20% the next day and people say, are you bullish on altcoins now? Absolutely not. Look at this. There's been many times where even during the bear market, you see Ethereum outperform Bitcoin for 2 weeks, then it goes down. Ethereum outperform Bitcoin for a month, then it goes down. Ethereum outperform Bitcoin for 3 weeks, then it goes down. Outperform for 2 weeks, then it goes down. Outperform for 2 weeks, then it goes down. The macro trend is pointing down, and it doesn't matter what altcoin you push at. Solana was performing better than all of these altcoins this market, or not all of them, but it was one of the best top performing altcoins this market cycle, and now all of them without fail are getting absolutely slaughtered against their Bitcoin pairs. So I hope you found some value in this video. I know it's not the most popular content, believe me, I'm a crypto YouTuber. I wish I could make every video, and I wish I could say, you know, our next fib target for Solana is $1,000, our next GMT target is $10. I wish I could be talking about this bullish adoption, but look at this data. You know, look at the Bitcoin dominance. The Bitcoin dominance is breaking out. If you're buying altcoins at this period in time, after reviewing all of the data that I just went through on this video, it's basically like putting a loaded revolver to your head and pulling the trigger because you know that it's probably going to kill you, but you want to see, you want to make sure. So it's not a good idea in my opinion. I really need to make these type of videos because I have so many people ask me, you know, altcoins outperform Bitcoin for like a week and then everyone gets bullish again. Everyone thinks that altcoins go to the moon. I see it all over my Twitter. Everyone's buying the dip, but look at the macro trend. Previously, when the Bitcoin dominance breaks out of these patterns, it goes on very lengthy, boring cycles. Look at this. This took 889 days for the Bitcoin dominance to top out, meaning that Bitcoin outperformed altcoins for ages. And once again, we've been through these charts. We looked at how ETH did against Bitcoin. We looked at how ADA did against Bitcoin. This was the Bitcoin bottom. Over on the ETH BTC pair, this was the Bitcoin bottom for ages. Literally, look at this, because I need to hammer this in. We were basically at the same price for 840 days on the altcoin BTC pairs for ETH. Coming over to this one, you know, from this low to when we started poking our head back above this range, how long was this? Sorry, this was the wrong type of chart. I'm going to wrap the video up on this note. But once again, 784 days after Bitcoin bottomed. It was not, if you basically, wrapping up the video on this note, if you bought altcoins during the Bitcoin bear market while Bitcoin was capitulating, you got wrecked. If you bought altcoins after Bitcoin bottomed, for the next 2 years, you got wrecked. Be very, very careful if you're trading altcoins right now. There are tons of moon boys who are going to tell you week after week after week that they have a new bottoming pattern. I've seen it with a ton of different channels. I've even seen it with one YouTuber that I do follow over on Twitter just for the banter, but every week they've got a new bottoming pattern. You know, one week it's like this moving average has historically always called the bottom, and then the next week when it doesn't work out, they're like, this Bitcoin pattern always breaks up to the upside, and then it breaks down. And then the next week they're like, oh my god, this has never happened. Bitcoin 8 weekly candles in a row, the 9th week has to be bullish. And then the 9th week in a row is bearish. We're in unprecedented times. I hope you enjoyed going through the data through an unemotional perspective. Like I said, I'm not an emotional trader. I love to look at the data. I love to say it how it is. And at this moment in time, you're going to get wrecked if you're on altcoins. Best of luck if you're planning on doing that anyway. But yeah, as I always said, cowboy out, not financial advice. Peace.